My name is Samantha Reed. I'm 30 years old, and I'm a marketing consultant who recently walked away from my family's empire, Reed Global Capital. I didn't just leave a job. I broke from a legacy that has defined the Reeds for decades. My father, Thomas Reed, built his firm into one of New York City's most admired financial institutions. My mother, Catherine, perfected the family's social standing through charity boards and elite Upper East Side galas. And my older brother, Jonathan, is the heir apparent, groomed to inherit everything my father built. Me? I chose a different path, one they never respected. Before I tell you how it all unraveled, let me pause for a second. If you're watching this video, let me know where you're tuning in from. Drop your city or country in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. I promise this isn't just another family drama. This is about betrayal, power, and what happens when you stand up for what's right. Sharing this story helps others find the courage to face their own. I grew up in a brownstone off Park Avenue, surrounded by reminders that success was our birthright. The Reed name carried weight in every boardroom, every country club, every charity gala. My father's mantra, family first, was etched into everything, engraved on the wall of his office, embroidered on napkins at Thanksgiving dinners. But family first never meant unconditional love. It meant loyalty to his rules, his vision, his firm. Jonathan thrived under that banner. He wore the family crest like a badge of honor, Harvard diploma in hand, running client meetings by the time he was 26. He loved being the golden child. I admired his confidence once, but as the years passed, it became clear. My father didn't just want Jonathan to succeed, he wanted me to disappear quietly into the background. I tried to fit the mold. After graduating from Temple University in Philadelphia with a degree in marketing, I joined Reed Global's marketing division. For 5 years, I poured myself into campaigns, client presentations, late nights rebranding strategies for investors who barely remembered my name. I climbed to director of marketing, but no matter what I accomplished, my father dismissed it as fluff. Real business isn't slogans and colors, Samantha. Real business is numbers and deals. He said it often enough that I started to believe him. But here's the thing. Marketing taught me to read people, to spot when someone was hiding the truth. It was a skill my family underestimated until I used it to see through them. Life in Philadelphia gave me freedom I never had in New York. I rented a modest apartment near Rittenhouse Square, close enough to clients but far enough from my family's shadow. Launching my own consultancy wasn't easy. I left Reed Global with nothing but a handful of loyal contacts and a fierce determination not to fail. Every morning, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of burnt diner coffee, drafting proposals and wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. Still, the independence felt like oxygen. For the first time, my ideas belonged to me. No brother stealing credit, no father questioning my worth, no mother whispering that my clothes were a little too bold for the Reed name. Yet even as I tried to build something new, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd walked away from a house built on sand. Late at night, memories of closed-door meetings and hushed voices in the hallways of Reed Global haunted me. There had been whispers of offshore accounts, sudden spikes in reported returns, employees dismissed without explanation. I told myself it wasn't my problem anymore, but deep down, I knew better. And that's where everything began to shift. That fall, as the leaves turned gold along Market Street, I found myself back in New York for a client meeting. Walking past the glass tower of Reed Global, I felt a chill crawl down my spine. The building was as polished as ever, reflecting the city's skyline like a mirror, but behind those windows, I sensed something rotten. I told myself I was imagining it, but soon I would learn just how deep the rot went. The night it all began, I hadn't planned on going back to Reed Global. I was in New York for a client pitch and should have been driving south to my apartment in Philadelphia, but something tugged at me. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was unfinished business, but I found myself steering toward Midtown, parking near the glass tower I once called home. The building was mostly dark, its mirrored windows reflecting the city's neon glow. I still had my old keycard, an oversight by HR when I left. Part of me expected it wouldn't work anymore. When the green light blinked and the turnstile clicked open, my chest tightened. I told myself I was just nostalgic, just walking familiar halls one last time. The lobby was silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. My heels echoed across the marble floor as I headed toward the elevators. When the doors opened onto the 22nd floor, memories rushed in. Years of sleepless nights, client decks spread across desks, coffee stains on my notebooks. The office looked frozen in time. I wasn't alone. Voices drifted from the glass-walled conference room at the end of the hall. I froze, heart hammering, and edged closer, careful to keep out of sight. Through the glass I saw my father, Thomas Reed, his posture rigid, and beside him my brother Jonathan, scrolling on his tablet. Their voices were low but sharp. "Transfers have to be staggered," Jonathan said, his tone clipped. "If Cayman sees too much movement at once—" "They won't," Thomas interrupted. "I've been doing this longer than you've been alive. Keep the client statements consistent. That's what matters." I swallowed hard. Cayman. Consistent statements. My stomach turned. Jonathan hesitated, then asked, "And what about the Osaka accounts?" "They're already showing irregularities." Thomas leaned in, his voice colder. "Shift funds from the Ferguson portfolio just like before. Clients won't know the difference, and if anyone asks, we call it reallocation for market protection." I stumbled back, my pulse racing. This wasn't just creative accounting, it sounded like fraud. The men left moments later, footsteps heading toward the executive elevator. I pressed myself against a cubicle wall until the ding of the lift disappeared. Only then did I breathe. Drawn by something I couldn't explain, I walked into Thomas's office. Everything was as meticulous as I remembered. Mahogany desk, family photos staged like a museum exhibit. The safe was tucked behind a panel near his bookshelf. My fingers trembled as I tried the code I'd seen him punch in once during a late-night crisis. To my shock, it worked. Inside were neatly stacked binders, each labeled with client names and years. I pulled one free. The pages reeked of ink and secrecy. Large transfers, offshore accounts, client returns adjusted by hand. At the bottom of one page was a name I recognized. Ferguson. Next to it, red arrows drawn to Osaka. My throat tightened. This was evidence, not suspicions, not rumors. I snapped a few quick photos with my phone, my hands shaking so badly the images blurred. I flipped to another page and froze. My name. Restrict access for Samantha Reed. Jonathan's handwriting, bold and slanted, signed off below. A noise behind me made me whip around. "Going through things that don't belong to you?" My father's voice sliced through the silence. He stood in the doorway, face unreadable, but his eyes burned with fury. I shut the binder, forcing calm into my voice. "I just came back to pick up some of my old files." Thomas stepped closer, his presence suffocating. "Don't lie to me. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Put that back, walk out, and forget you ever saw it." I met his gaze, my chest rising with defiance. Is this what family first means? Hiding money, lying to clients? His jaw tightened. "You will not repeat those words outside this office, do you understand me? Because if you do—" He let the threat hang, cold and heavy. For a heartbeat, I thought he might actually grab my phone. Instead, he leaned in until I could smell the faint trace of his cologne. "Go back to Philadelphia, Samantha. Stay in your little marketing world. This business isn't for you." Then he snatched the binder from my hands, slid it back into the safe, and reset the code. The final click of the lock echoed like a gavel. I walked out without another word, my pulse a drumbeat in my ears. By the time I reached the street, my knees threatened to give way. The night air felt colder than it should have in September. I told myself I'd forget what I saw, but the truth had already taken root, and once you glimpse the rot, you can't unsee it. By the time I reached the sidewalk, I thought I'd escaped. The binder was back in the safe, the office doors locked behind me, and I had only a handful of blurry photos on my phone. My heels clicked against the pavement as I tried to steady my breath, repeating to myself that it was over for tonight, but I wasn't alone. "Going somewhere, Samantha?" I froze. My father's voice, sharp as a blade, cut through the hum of late-night traffic. Thomas Reed stepped out from the shadows near the revolving doors, coat draped over his arm like he had all the time in the world. His expression was calm, too calm, the kind that carried more weight than shouting ever could. "I thought you'd gone home," I said, trying to sound casual though my pulse was slamming in my throat. He gave a dry laugh. "Home? Not when my daughter is rummaging through safes she has no business opening." His gaze flicked to the phone in my hand. "Delete whatever you took." I tightened my grip on the phone, forcing my voice steady. "I was just curious about the firm, about the things you've been hiding." Thomas's jaw clenched, but he stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Curiosity is dangerous, especially in this business. People who dig too deep don't always like what they find." He paused, eyes locking with mine. "And sometimes they don't get the chance to walk away from it." The chill in his tone seeped into my skin. He wasn't yelling, but the quiet menace carried more threat than if he'd shouted. "Dad." My voice cracked on the word. I hated that it still came out so childlike. "Is it true? Are you moving client money offshore, covering losses with new investments?" He tilted his head, almost pitying. "You don't understand the scale of what we do here. This firm supports hundreds of families, millions in assets. Sometimes adjustments have to be made. That's not fraud, Samantha. It's survival." "Survival for who?" I shot back, the words leaving before I could stop them. "Because it sure as hell isn't for the clients." For the first time, his composure slipped. His eyes narrowed, voice hardening. "You listen to me. You are not going to ruin what I've built because you think you've found some smoking gun. Marketing is your world. Colors, slogans, clients who like pretty words. Leave the real business to people who can handle it." I felt the sting, sharper than I wanted to admit. Still, I held my ground. Maybe I don't know everything, but I know right from wrong. And this, what I saw, it's wrong. Thomas leaned in so close I could smell the faint bite of scotch on his breath. "If you ever breathe a word of this outside this family, you will regret it. Not just in court, not just financially. Regret in ways you can't even imagine." The words hung in the night air, heavier than the skyscrapers around us. I swallowed hard, forcing myself not to flinch. "You can threaten me all you want. I'm not blind anymore." His lips curled in something between a sneer and a smile. "We'll see." He turned, walking toward the curb where a black car idled, driver waiting. The door shut with a thud, leaving me standing on the sidewalk, shaken but strangely certain. I looked down at my phone. The blurry photos weren't much, but they were enough to prove that I hadn't imagined any of it. My father could threaten me, belittle me, even try to scare me into silence. But the truth had already found me, and it wasn't going to let me go. I barely slept that night. My father's threat replayed in my head on a loop, every word sinking deeper like shards of glass. By morning, my phone was still on the nightstand, screen lit with the blurry photos I had taken. Proof, but not nearly enough. Proof that could vanish if I slipped once. I needed to tell someone. I couldn't carry the weight of it alone. So I called Melissa Carter. Melissa had been my closest friend since college. Late-night pizza in dorm lounges, cramming for exams, celebrating our first jobs with cheap champagne in plastic cups. She was the one person outside my family who understood what it was like to work inside Reed Global. 2 years after I started in marketing, she'd joined the firm in account management. My mother adored her, often saying, "Melissa might as well be a Reed." That used to feel like a compliment. When she answered, her voice was warm and familiar. "Sam, hey, you sound tired. Are you okay?" "Not really," I admitted. "Do you have time tonight? I need to talk." "Of course. Meet me at Finnegan's? 8 o'clock?" Finnegan's was our old haunt near the office, a wood-paneled bar with dim lights and the best nachos in Midtown. It felt safe. That evening, Melissa was already at the bar when I arrived, a glass of white wine in her hand. She stood to hug me, squeezing tighter than usual. "You look like hell, Sam." "What's going on?" The words tumbled out faster than I expected. "I went back to the office last night." Her brows shot up. "Why would you—" "I don't know, I had this feeling, and I overheard Dad and Jonathan. They were talking about transfers, Cayman accounts, Osaka funds, things that didn't sound legal. My voice dropped to a whisper. And then I found a binder. Records of offshore accounts, adjusted returns, even a note about restricting my access. Melissa's lips parted, eyes wide. She leaned closer across the table. "Sam? That's huge. Did anyone see you?" I hesitated. "My father caught me. He told me if I said anything, I'd regret it. He wasn't bluffing." Her hand covered mine. "God, Sam, that's terrifying." She glanced around the bar as if making sure no one was listening. "You can't just hold on to this. You need protection, legal advice, something." I let out a shaky laugh. "I know, I didn't know who else to tell. You're the only person I trust." Melissa gave a small smile, though something flickered in her eyes, gone before I could name it. "Of course you can trust me. Always." I wanted to believe her. The knot in my chest loosened as I exhaled. "I don't have much yet," I confessed. "A few photos on my phone. Blurry, but they prove something's there. I think Dad and Jonathan have been running a system, moving money to cover losses. If that comes out, Reed Global could collapse." Melissa squeezed my hand tighter. "Sam, listen to me. You have to be careful. Even telling me is risky." "I know," I whispered, "but I couldn't keep it inside. I needed someone to know I'm not crazy." She nodded, her expression sympathetic. "You're not crazy. You're brave. But promise me, you won't go back there alone again. Please." I promised. And in that moment, it felt like I'd found an anchor in a storm. Later, walking back to my hotel, I replayed the conversation in my head. Her concern had seemed genuine, her advice reasonable, but something nagged at me, an almost imperceptible hesitation before she said always. I brushed it off. Paranoia, I told myself. After everything I'd been through, of course I was suspicious. Melissa was my friend, my confidant. She wouldn't hurt me. At least that's what I wanted to believe. For a few days, I let myself believe I wasn't carrying the burden alone. Melissa had listened, held my hand, promised I wasn't crazy. I went back to Philadelphia trying to focus on clients, reminding myself I had left Reed Global for a reason. But unease clung to me like static. Every time I glanced at my phone, I wondered if those blurry photos were enough, if I should do more, or if sharing them with Melissa had already been a mistake. The answer came sooner than I expected. The following week, one of my old colleagues called me. Maya, a junior analyst who used to help prep my marketing decks, whispered urgently through the line. "Sam, I don't know if I should be telling you this, but something weird happened in the boardroom today." My stomach knotted. "What kind of weird?" "They presented a new campaign pitch, supposedly Jonathan's big idea, but it was your work. The same strategy you showed me months ago for the Hamilton account. Exact slides, even your phrasing." I stopped pacing in my kitchen, gripping the counter for balance. "Are you sure?" I'd bet my job on it, and Melissa was in the room. She gave the opening remarks like she'd been part of it from the start. I didn't answer at first. I couldn't. The silence stretched until Maya whispered again, "Sam, I thought you should know." When the call ended, I stood frozen, the betrayal crashing over me in waves. My best friend hadn't just listened. She'd handed my work to my brother, polished it, and watched him claim it as his own. 2 nights later, I went back to New York for a client dinner. Curiosity, or maybe self-destruction, pulled me toward the office tower. I told myself I just wanted to confirm Maya's story. The lobby security guard still recognized me. "Back visiting?" he asked. "Just dropping something off," I lied. I took the elevator to the 20th floor where the boardrooms were. Through the frosted glass of conference room B, I saw them. Jonathan at the head of the table, Melissa at his side. Slides projected onto the wall bore my design. My fonts, my layout, even the tagline I'd agonized over for weeks. I pressed myself against the wall, straining to hear. "This strategy positions Reed Global as the premier choice for legacy investors," Jonathan declared. "It anticipates market volatility while offering stability. It's innovative but familiar." The room murmured approval. Then Melissa chimed in, smiling as she gestured at the screen. We've already tested this concept with select clients. Feedback was overwhelmingly positive. My blood boiled. Tested? She hadn't written a word of it, and now she was dressing it up as her own contribution. The applause that followed felt like nails against glass. I backed away before someone noticed me. My throat burned with the effort of holding in a scream. Later that night, I confronted her. We met at a cafe near Bryant Park, one we'd gone to dozens of times before. The familiarity made the anger sharper. You gave them my work, I said without preamble. Melissa blinked innocently, stirring her coffee. Sam, what are you talking about? Don't play dumb. The Hamilton strategy, my campaign. Jonathan presented it like it was his, and you stood there, smiling like it was your idea too. Her lips pressed into a thin line before she sighed. Look, it's complicated. Jonathan needed something strong for the board. I thought— You thought what? My voice rose, earning glances from nearby tables. That stabbing me in the back would help your career? That betraying me to my family was no big deal? Melissa leaned forward, lowering her voice. I did it for you, too. You walked away, Sam. You left the firm, left your connections. If your ideas stay in the vault, they die there. This way, at least they live on. The justification hit me like a slap. Live on? They're not ideas, Melissa. They're mine. You didn't just betray me professionally. You handed ammunition to the very people trying to bury me. Her eyes flickered, guilt and defensiveness warring. Jonathan said if I helped, there'd be a place for me at the top. And honestly, Sam, you never wanted it. Not really. You were always half in, half out. I shook my head, tears stinging. You don't get to decide what I wanted. You don't get to rewrite my life because it's convenient for you. Melissa reached for my hand, but I pulled back. Please, Sam, I didn't mean for it to hurt you this way. You meant every bit of it, I snapped. You looked me in the eye at Finnegan's and told me I could trust you, and the whole time you were feeding them everything I said. The silence between us was louder than any fight. Finally, she whispered, I'm sorry. But the word was hollow, already stripped of meaning. I left the cafe shaking, my chest hollow. On the street, the city buzzed like nothing had changed. But inside me, everything had. I had proof of my father's corruption, and now I knew. My best friend was standing on the other side, shoulder to shoulder with my family. The loneliness was suffocating, but underneath it, a new emotion stirred. Rage. If they thought they could silence me, they'd forgotten one thing. I had nothing left to lose. The betrayal sat heavy in my chest, but when November rolled around, tradition still pulled at me like a chain. Thanksgiving at my parents' Upper East Side townhouse had been ritual since childhood, my mother orchestrating every detail, my father carving the turkey with surgical precision, Jonathan announcing his latest triumphs. Even after quitting the firm, even after everything, a part of me clung to the possibility of reconciliation. So, I called my mother the week before. Dinner starts at 2, Catherine said coolly. Wear something appropriate. The words were clipped, but not a refusal. I held on to that thin thread of hope. Thanksgiving morning in Philadelphia was unseasonably warm. Sunlight spilled across my kitchen counter where a pecan pie cooled, the recipe scrawled in my grandmother's handwriting propped against the backsplash. I had baked it for my father. It was his favorite, and I wanted him to see I remembered. I dressed carefully, a forest green sweater paired with a camel skirt, understated jewelry, makeup light enough to avoid my mother's critique. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked like someone still desperate for her family's approval. The drive to New York took just under 3 hours with light traffic. As I crossed the George Washington Bridge, my hands tightened on the steering wheel. I rehearsed small talk, compliment my mother's table, ask Jonathan about his new projects, pretend Melissa didn't exist. Maybe, just maybe, we could share a meal without tearing each other apart. But when I pulled onto East 74th Street, doubt set in. The block was lined with cars, more than usual. My parents often invited family friends, but the sheer number parked outside made my pulse quicken. I recognized the sleek black Mercedes belonging to Uncle David, then the silver Range Rover Jonathan drove, and parked neatly at the curb, Melissa's Audi. My chest clenched. Why was she here, after everything? I parked a block away and walked toward the brownstone, pie and a bottle of Cabernet balanced in my arms. The townhouse glowed warmly through tall windows, silhouettes shifting inside. Laughter drifted into the crisp air, mixed with faint strains of classical music. For a moment, it almost looked like home. Almost. As I climbed the familiar steps, a memory surfaced. My brother and I as children, racing up these same stairs with mittens full of snow, my mother scolding us for dripping water on her Persian rugs. The house had once felt alive. Now it loomed, immaculate and cold. I rang the bell. Conversation inside hushed. Footsteps echoed against marble floors until the heavy door opened. My father stood there in his navy blazer and striped tie, my mother beside him in pearls. Their faces were stone. "Happy Thanksgiving," I said softly, lifting the pie like an offering. Thomas's voice was flat. "What are you doing here?" Shock rippled through me. "Dinner." Mom said 2:00. Catherine's hand tightened on the doorframe. "There's been a misunderstanding. You're not invited this year." Through the crack, I saw the dining room, the china set, candles flickering, the centerpiece of autumn gourds my mother arranged every year. Around the table sat Jonathan in a burgundy suit, Uncle David sipping scotch, and, my heart plummeted, Melissa, seated right where I used to sit. She looked away quickly, but not before I caught the smirk tugging at her lips. Heat rose in my face. "Why?" My voice trembled despite my effort. Thomas didn't blink. "You know why. Choices have consequences." The pie grew heavier in my arms. My mother's eyes darted nervously toward the street, as if worried neighbors might overhear. "It would be best if you left now," she whispered. Behind them, a banner stretched across the dining room wall in gold script, "Family First." The irony stole my breath. I stood frozen, humiliation burning through me. Guests at the table shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke. No one stopped it. Finally, I straightened my shoulders, refusing to let them see me break. "Happy Thanksgiving," I managed, though the words tasted like ash. I turned and walked down the steps, each footstep echoing louder than the last. From the sidewalk, I looked back one final time at the glowing windows, at the silhouettes raising glasses in a toast I was never meant to hear. The pecan pie sat useless in my arms, the bottle of wine digging into my palm. I walked to my car, heart hollow but resolve hardening with every step. If they had made their choice, then so would I. I might have walked away quietly that day, pie in hand and dignity intact, if not for the sound of the door opening again behind me. "Wait!" My father's voice boomed, carrying farther than he intended. Heads turned, neighbors stepping out of townhouses, guests arriving late with bottles of wine, even the doorman across the street. New York sidewalks are never truly empty. An audience had formed without invitation. I froze mid-step, turning slowly. Thomas stood on the stoop, his face flushed. Catherine hovered beside him, lips pinched tight. "Tell them why you're here," he demanded. His voice wasn't just for me, it was for everyone within earshot. "Tell them what you've done." A murmur rippled through the gathering crowd. My stomach dropped. He was making a spectacle of me. I set the pie down carefully on the stone railing, my hands trembling. "I came for dinner." "Like every other year." "You came to poison this family with lies," he snapped. His finger jabbed toward me as though I were a criminal on trial. "You spread rumors about our firm. You accuse your own blood of fraud because you're too weak to succeed on your own." Gasps rose from behind the windows where guests pressed closer to watch. Through the glass I could see Jonathan's smirk, Melissa whispering into his ear. My place at the table had been replaced, erased. "Dad?" My voice cracked. "You know that's not true. I worked harder than anyone for this family. I bled for Reed Global." His laugh was cruel. "You colored brochures, Samantha. Don't delude yourself. You were never cut out for this business, and now you want to tear it down because you couldn't carry the weight." Catherine finally spoke, her words sharp enough to slice. You shame us, arriving here uninvited. Do you know what people say? That you're unstable, obsessed, that you'd rather destroy your father's legacy than build your own life. The humiliation burned hotter than the November chill. Neighbors lingered on the steps of their own homes, pretending to adjust scarves while listening intently. A woman across the street whispered to her husband, eyes fixed on me. I should have left. I should have swallowed the pain and walked away, but anger surged up, steadying my spine. Unstable? I said loudly enough for every bystander to hear. You're calling me unstable while you sit inside celebrating with stolen money and lies? You talk about legacy, but all you've built is a house of cards, and everyone here will see it collapse. A shocked silence fell. My father's jaw tightened, and for a flicker of a second, fear crossed his eyes. He masked it quickly with fury. You see? He barked to the crowd. This is what I mean. Delusions. Accusations without proof. This is why she was cut off. She doesn't belong at this table. From inside, Melissa rose from her stolen seat, leaning casually against the window. She raised her glass toward me with a smile that was half triumph, half pity. My knees almost buckled at the sight. The door slammed shut behind my parents, leaving me on the steps, my words still hanging in the cold air. For a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, the conversations resumed, neighbors shaking their heads, guests pretending not to have seen. But I caught the glances. Pity, judgment, curiosity. I picked up the pie again, my hands steady now. The bottle of Cabernet clinked against the stone railing. Without another word, I turned and walked down the block, the sound of muffled laughter spilling from the townhouse windows. I didn't cry until I reached my car. My reflection in the windshield looked like a stranger, eyes hollow, makeup streaked, shoulders shaking. I set the pie gently on the passenger seat, buckled it in like it mattered. Then I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel and let the sobs come. Not just for the humiliation, not just for being cast out in front of strangers, but for the realization that my family had chosen this path deliberately. It wasn't an accident or misunderstanding. They had scripted it, performed it, displayed it for all to see. It was their final message. You are not one of us. As I drove away from the Upper East Side, city lights blurred through tears. But beneath the pain, something colder and sharper took root. Anger. Resolve. They thought they had shamed me into silence. They thought public humiliation would crush me. Instead, it lit a fuse. The next morning, my phone buzzed with messages. A cousin from Boston. Sam, are you okay? I heard what happened last night. An old family friend. Your father was harsh. Maybe lay low for a while? Even my former assistant from Reed Global sent a text. Office is buzzing. They say you confronted Thomas in front of everyone. People are starting to ask questions. So their attempt at silencing me had backfired. Whispers were already spreading, and whispers could turn into rumors, and rumors, if nurtured, could become the truth. And I had the seeds. I closed my laptop after rereading the photos I'd taken of the binder. They were blurry, incomplete, but they were something. Combined with what I'd heard, what I'd seen, and what I'd lived, there was a story waiting to be told. Thanksgiving had ended with a slammed door and a banner proclaiming "Family First." But for the first time, I understood what that phrase really meant in my family. Loyalty was demanded, never returned. And if they thought they had won, they were about to learn just how dangerous an exile with nothing left to lose could be. The morning after Thanksgiving, my apartment in Philadelphia felt too quiet, like the silence itself was watching me. The pecan pie I'd brought home untouched sat on the counter, a mocking reminder of everything I'd lost. My phone buzzed with messages I ignored. Pity from cousins, vague concern from family friends, one pathetic apology from Melissa that I couldn't bring myself to open. I should have collapsed, curled into bed, let the humiliation consume me. But instead, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the blurry photos from my father's binder. My pulse slowed, my tears dried, and something harder, sharper began to take shape inside me. If they wanted me gone, I would make my absence unforgettable. The first step was finding someone who could confirm what I already suspected. That led me to Evan Brooks, a former risk analyst at Reed Global. He'd been fired the year before under performance issues, but I remembered the whispers. He'd raised questions about irregular accounts. I dug through old emails until I found his contact, then called. He didn't answer at first. When he finally picked up, his voice was wary. "Samantha Reed? Why are you calling me?" "Because I think we're both looking at the same thing," I said. "Fraud. Offshore transfers. Fabricated returns." There was a long pause. "Careful, Samantha. People who talk about those things don't usually keep their jobs, or their peace of mind." I swallowed hard. I already lost both. "Please, Evan, just meet me." We met that evening at a small diner off Broad Street, the kind of place where no one cared who you were as long as you paid cash. Evan looked older than I remembered, dark circles under his eyes, fingers twitching restlessly against the coffee mug. "You're brave," he muttered once we sat down. "Or stupid." "Maybe both," I admitted, "but I need to know what you saw, what they're hiding." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I flagged multiple client accounts. Ferguson, Osaka, Redwood. Money was being shifted between them in patterns that didn't make sense, losses disguised as gains. When I pushed too hard, they locked me out of the system. A week later, I was gone." My chest tightened. That matches what I saw in the binder. I slid my phone across the table, showing him the grainy photos. He studied them, nodding slowly. "Yeah, this is it. Not all of it, but enough to prove you're not crazy." The relief nearly buckled me. I wasn't alone. "But listen," Evan warned, eyes darting toward the window as though expecting shadows to move. "This isn't just your father and brother. There are partners involved, clients who look the other way. If you go after them, they won't just fight back in court. They'll come for you in other ways." I felt my throat tighten, but forced my voice steady. "They already did. They humiliated me in front of my entire family, neighbors, half the damn block. I'm done being scared." Leaving the diner, the cold air bit at my skin, but I felt lighter. Determination buzzed through my veins, stronger than fear. Back home, I cleared my dining table and spread out everything I had. Photos, old emails, notes scribbled during late nights at the office. Piece by piece, a picture began to form. A pattern of lies, neat columns of deception. I started a digital folder too, scanning and encrypting everything. If they tried to destroy me, I'd make sure the evidence survived. Still, doubt whispered at the edges. I couldn't take them on alone. That night, I scrolled through my contacts until my thumb hovered over one name: Andrew Collins. We'd known each other in college. He was now an attorney at the SEC in Washington, D.C. Weeks ago, I'd considered reaching out. Now, I knew I had no choice. I typed a message. "Andrew, it's Sam Reed. I need to talk. It's urgent, about my family's firm. Do you have time to meet?" I stared at the screen before hitting send, my heart pounding. Seconds later, the typing dots appeared. Then his reply. "Tomorrow, 8 a.m. My office. Bring everything." For the first time in months, I allowed myself a faint smile. My family had shut me out, humiliated me, branded me unstable. But they had underestimated me, and now I was done playing by their rules. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Andrew's reply glowing on my phone. "Tomorrow, 8 a.m. My office. Bring everything. Everything. What I had, blurry photos and half-remembered conversations, wouldn't be enough. My father's lawyers could bury it in minutes. If I wanted to walk into the SEC with evidence that couldn't be ignored, I needed more. Something irrefutable. By 2 a.m., the decision was made. The streets of Midtown were nearly empty when I parked 2 blocks from Reed Global's tower. I'd dressed in dark jeans, sneakers, and a black jacket. Practical, forgettable. My pulse hammered so hard I thought it might echo down the street. The lobby guard was new. That helped. I slipped inside when a delivery man exited, holding the door for me without thinking. My old keycard was useless now. I'd tested it days ago, but Evan had told me about a side stairwell still left unlocked after renovations. I found it, pushed, and the heavy metal door groaned open. Inside, the building smelled faintly of industrial cleaner and paper. I climbed, every creak of the steps sounding like a gunshot. On the 22nd floor, I paused, listening. Silence. The workday had ended hours ago. I tried the glass door into the executive wing. Locked. My throat tightened. This was where it ended, I thought. Then I remembered the emergency latch near the copy room. I pressed my hand against the narrow panel. Miraculously, it gave way. I was in. My father's office was exactly as I remembered. Mahogany desk, polished to a shine, shelves lined with leather-bound books he'd never read, the family crest mounted above like a crown. The safe behind the panel was the real heart of it all. Kneeling, I punched in the code I'd memorized weeks earlier. Wrong. I tried again, fingers slick with sweat. Still wrong. My breath caught. Had he changed it? I closed my eyes, forced myself to remember the rhythm of his hand, the way his thumb lingered on the last digit. I tried once more. The click of the lock opening nearly dropped me to my knees. Inside, neat binders and hard drives were stacked like soldiers. I pulled one binder labeled Redwood Holdings, 2021. The numbers leapt off the page. Losses disguised as profits, money shuffled into offshore accounts. I snapped photo after photo, moving faster now. Another binder, Ferguson Portfolio, same pattern. Then Osaka Trusts. The amounts were staggering. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I nearly screamed. It was a text from Melissa. "We need to talk. It's not what you think." I clenched my jaw, shoving the phone back. Not now. I slid open a drawer and found something worse. Printed email chains. One in particular made my blood run cold. "Restrict Samantha Reed's access immediately. She's asking too many questions." Signed by Jonathan. And beneath it, a note in Melissa's handwriting. "I'll redirect her focus to new presentations. Don't worry." The betrayal was in black and white. A noise outside froze me. Footsteps. I killed the desk lamp, pressing myself against the shelves. The door creaked open. A security guard stepped inside, flashlight sweeping. "Mr. Reed," he called softly. "You still here?" I held my breath. The beam skimmed over the desk, over the safe now slightly ajar. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure he'd hear it. He muttered something under his breath, then closed the door again. The footsteps faded down the hall. I exhaled shakily, gathering what I could. Photos, a handful of copied documents stuffed into my bag. I couldn't risk more. The building suddenly felt alive with eyes, every shadow whispering that I didn't belong. By the time I slipped out the stairwell and onto the street, dawn was breaking. The city was stirring awake, traffic humming, lights flickering in high-rise windows. I leaned against the cool stone of a building, my breath fogging in the morning air. My hands shook as I checked my phone. Dozens of new images filled my gallery. Proof, real proof, that Reed Global wasn't what it pretended to be. But the document with Melissa's handwriting cut the deepest. She hadn't just betrayed me with silence. She had been actively feeding my family information about me, guiding them in their plot to shut me out. I climbed into my car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. For the first time since Thanksgiving, I felt steady. They wanted me silenced. They wanted me erased. Instead, I had the weapon they feared most, the truth. Tomorrow, I'd put it in Andrew Collins's hands. I barely slept before my meeting with Andrew, nerves keeping me wired. The bag at my feet held copies of the binders, email chains, and a memory card full of photos I had pulled from my father's safe. It should have been enough, but paranoia gnawed at me. Evidence could be dismissed as misinterpreted. They could claim I forged it. I needed something undeniable. A voice. Their words, not mine. That night, I followed my instincts, and my suspicions about Melissa. She had texted me twice since Thanksgiving, both messages variations of, "We should talk," and "It's not what you think." I ignored them, but when Evan mentioned he'd seen her leaving the Reed offices late after private meetings with Jonathan, I felt the pieces sliding into place. If Melissa was still feeding them information, maybe she'd slip. So I waited. It was near midnight when I spotted her through the window of a Brooklyn cafe, Melissa in her trench coat, sitting across from Jonathan. I slid into a booth near the back, pulling my baseball cap low. My heart pounded as I slid my phone onto the table, thumb tapping the voice recorder. Their voices carried just enough in the near-empty room. "Samantha's getting reckless," Jonathan muttered, running a hand through his hair. "She's not scared anymore. That's dangerous." Melissa's reply was softer but clear. "I told you she had photos. From the safe. She showed me at Finnegan's." My chest tightened. So she had been playing me from the very beginning. Jonathan cursed under his breath. "Dad's furious. If she goes public, it's not just the firm, it's prison for all of us." Melissa reached for his hand across the table. "Then we have to shut her down before she gets that far." Every muscle in my body went rigid. Jonathan leaned closer, voice low. "Security said someone was in Dad's office this week. Files moved. You think it was her?" Melissa hesitated just a beat too long. "Yes, she won't stop now. She's too angry. If you want me to, I can keep tabs on her. She still believes I care." Jonathan smirked. "Good. Feed her just enough to keep her distracted, and if she slips, we'll have the grounds to bury her. Legally, socially, whatever it takes." The phone in my pocket vibrated with a message, startling me so badly I nearly dropped it. The sound was muffled, but Jonathan's eyes darted toward me. I ducked lower, pretending to rummage in my bag. Melissa glanced toward the back of the cafe, her eyes sweeping dangerously close to my booth. For one terrifying moment, I thought she'd spotted me. Then Jonathan's phone rang. He cursed, answering quickly. Melissa leaned back, her attention elsewhere. I grabbed my phone, stopped the recording, and slipped out the side door before they could notice. On the subway ride home, adrenaline surged so strong I could barely breathe. My finger hovered over the recording, replaying the voices I'd known my entire life. Jonathan's arrogance, Melissa's betrayal. There it was, proof of conspiracy, of intent. Words they could never deny. But as the train rattled into Philadelphia, another feeling replaced the rush. Dread. The following morning, I noticed it. The car parked half a block from my apartment, engine idling. Same model, same color, 3 days in a row. A man sat inside pretending to read a newspaper. My phone buzzed again, an unknown number. The message was short. "Stop digging, Sam, for your own good." I felt the blood drain from my face. My father's warning echoed, "Regret in ways you can't even imagine." I grabbed my bag and pressed the elevator button with trembling hands. Meeting Andrew couldn't wait. Whatever storm I had unleashed, it was already circling closer. That night, sitting at my desk, I backed up the recording onto 3 separate drives, encrypting each. I mailed one to Evan, another to a safety deposit box downtown. If they came for me, they wouldn't be able to erase the truth. Still, as I drew the blinds and double-checked the locks, I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on me. The threat was no longer abstract. It was outside my door, humming in parked cars, hidden in text messages. And yet, beneath the fear, I felt steadier than ever. They wanted me cornered. Instead, they'd given me exactly what I needed, their own voices promising my destruction. The threats stopped being shadows and whispers. They came into the daylight. It started on Monday morning, when my inbox flooded with messages from clients. One subject line screamed, "Serious allegations against Samantha Reed." I opened one email and nearly choked. Attached was a glossy PDF exposé, claiming I had stolen proprietary data from Reed Global, doctored financial records, and attempted to blackmail investors. My name was plastered across it in bold letters. By noon, the story hit the financial blogs. Headlines read, "Estranged daughter of Thomas Reed accused of sabotage." The timing was surgical, meant to discredit me before I could meet Andrew at the SEC. My phone buzzed again. Andrew. "Sam." His voice was clipped, urgent. "I've seen the press. They're moving fast to smear you. Do you have the originals?" "I do," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Binders, copies, a recording." "Good. Because they're going to try to drown you in noise. Don't answer the press. Don't engage. Let the evidence speak." I thanked him, but when I hung up, my hands shook. It wasn't just a smear campaign, it was war. That evening, a thick envelope slid under my apartment door. Inside was a legal notice. Reed Global was suing me for breach of fiduciary duty, theft of trade secrets, and defamation. Their lawyers weren't wasting time. I called Evan. "They're trying to bury you in litigation," he muttered. "Classic Reed move. Smother the truth under a mountain of paperwork. They know most people can't afford to fight." "I'm not most people anymore," I said, though my voice faltered. The next blow came from someone I hadn't expected. My mother. I saw her on TV 2 days later, her pearl necklace gleaming under studio lights, posture perfect. "Our daughter Samantha is deeply troubled," she told the anchor, her voice heavy with practiced sorrow. "We've tried to help her, but she insists on spreading lies that endanger not only our family, but hundreds of innocent employees. We hope she finds peace." The words sliced deeper than the lawsuit. She hadn't just chosen their side. She'd painted me as unstable for the whole country to see. Later that night, I sat in my living room with Evan. He'd brought takeout and his laptop, helping me sort through evidence. But even he couldn't ignore the growing danger. "They won't stop at lawsuits and press," he warned, glancing at the darkened window. "You embarrassed them publicly. You've got proof that could ruin them. They're going to escalate." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with another unknown number. A text. "Accidents happen. Be careful crossing the street." I swallowed hard, showing him the screen. His jaw tightened. "Sam, you need protection. You can't just walk around alone anymore." But I shook my head. If I back down now, they win. They wanted to make me afraid. I won't give them that. The next morning, I decided to face Melissa directly. I found her outside the Reed offices, coffee in hand, phone pressed to her ear. When she saw me, her expression flickered. Guilt, then defiance. "You look tired, Sam," she said coolly. "Maybe you should take a break from all this." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "I have a recording, Melissa. You and Jonathan, talking about shutting me down, feeding them my information. How long did you think you could play both sides?" Her face drained of color. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I cut in. "You sold me out. You traded our friendship for a seat at their table. And now you're going to sink with them." For once, she had no clever response, just silence. I turned and walked away, heart pounding, knowing I had rattled her. But fear lurked, too. If she told Jonathan I had that recording, the danger would escalate again. That night, as I double-checked the locks on my apartment, I realized the truth. My family had already chosen their weapons: lawsuits, slander, intimidation. Now it was my turn to fight back. I opened my laptop, organized the evidence into a single airtight package: documents, photos, recordings. Then I drafted an anonymous email to a trusted journalist I knew from a past campaign. I didn't hit send yet, but the cursor blinked like a promise. If Reed Global wanted war, I would give them one. The hearing room at the U.S. District Courthouse in Lower Manhattan was packed. Rows of reporters with notepads poised, cameras flashing with each arrival, investors whispering nervously. I sat at the witness table, palms damp against the polished wood, my evidence files stacked neatly beside me. Across the aisle sat my family. My father in a tailored navy suit, jaw clenched, eyes cold. Jonathan tapping a pen too quickly against his legal pad. My mother with her pearls, her expression painted into a mask of composure that couldn't hide the fury beneath. And just behind them, Melissa, pretending she didn't see me. For months they had smeared me, sued me, tried to crush me under their weight. Now the tables had turned. The judge entered and the room quieted. "This hearing concerns allegations of securities fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice by Reed Global." His voice echoed through the chamber. "We will begin with the whistleblower's testimony, Ms. Samantha Reed." My throat tightened. Every eye in the room was on me. But when I opened my folder and pulled out the first set of documents, my voice found its steadiness. "Thank you, Your Honor." I began with the binders. Photos, scanned pages, ledger entries. "These are client accounts: Redwood, Ferguson, Osaka. You'll see consistent misrepresentation of losses, with funds redirected to offshore accounts. The patterns are deliberate. Coordinated! The defense attorney objected, but Andrew, seated beside me, countered firmly. The judge allowed me to continue. I shifted to the emails. Projected on the courtroom screen, the words filled the silence. Restrict Samantha Reed's access immediately. She's asking too many questions. Gasps rippled through the room. Jonathan's face drained of color. Those emails, I explained, were sent between my brother Jonathan Reed and my former colleague Melissa Carter. They confirm a conscious effort to block me from uncovering the scheme. Melissa stared at the floor, lips pressed tight. Then I played the recording. The speakers crackled, and Jonathan's voice filled the room. She's not scared anymore. That's dangerous. Then Melissa's. She has photos from the safe she showed me at Finnegan's. And Jonathan again. If she goes public, it's not just the firm. It's prison. For all of us. The room erupted. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras flashed. My father's lawyer shouted objections, but the damage was done. The words were undeniable. The prosecution's witnesses followed, Evan testifying about accounts he flagged before being terminated, a forensic accountant confirming the falsified returns, an SEC investigator outlining offshore transfers traced back 5 years. Each testimony was another nail in the coffin. Finally, my father took the stand. He didn't look at me as he swore in. His voice was calm, practiced. Reed Global has operated with integrity for 35 years. My daughter is misinformed, perhaps manipulated. She has no real understanding of high-level financial practices. The prosecutor leaned forward. Mr. Reed, are you denying this is your voice in the recording? Silence. The recording played again. If she goes public, it's not just the firm. It's prison. His face turned a shade darker. Taken out of context, he said flatly. Context? I finally spoke, my voice breaking through the courtroom. Context is you threatening me on the sidewalk. Context is you shutting me out of Thanksgiving and branding me unstable. Context is decades of hiding behind loyalty while you robbed the people who trusted you. For the first time, his composure cracked. His eyes locked on mine, full of rage and something else. Fear. By the end of the week, the ruling was clear. Reed Global was to be restructured under federal oversight, assets frozen. My father and Jonathan indicted on multiple counts of fraud and obstruction. Melissa named as a co-conspirator for knowingly misleading clients. The news spread like wildfire. Headlines blared. Reed Empire collapses after whistleblower exposes fraud. Investors lined the courthouse steps, shouting questions, cameras flashing nonstop. Through it all, I walked out steady. For once, I didn't feel small under their gaze. Weeks later, I returned to Philadelphia. My apartment was the same. Plants drooping in the window, the pie plate still shoved in the back of the fridge. But I wasn't. The calls came. Journalists, advocacy groups, business schools wanting me to speak. They wanted to hear how I'd faced down one of the most respected financial families in New York. But what mattered most wasn't the headlines. It was the freedom. No more secrets. No more begging for a seat at a table that was never mine. 1 year after the hearing, I stood at a podium in front of a packed auditorium at Columbia University, speaking to students about ethics in business. My last name once opened doors, I told them, but it also chained me to silence. I learned that loyalty without integrity is just another kind of prison, and sometimes the only way to honor your family is to break from it. The applause was thunderous. As I stepped off stage, Andrew clapped me on the shoulder. You've become something they never expected, Sam. A symbol. I smiled faintly. Not a symbol, just someone who finally stopped being afraid. Looking back now, the pain of that Thanksgiving feels distant but unforgettable. My family thought shame would silence me, that betrayal would crush me, that fear would keep me in line. Instead, it carved me into someone stronger. I've learned that family isn't defined by blood or last names. It's defined by the people who stand beside you when standing costs something. Melissa showed me betrayal can wear a smile, but Evan and Andrew reminded me that courage is contagious. I've also learned that truth has a weight nothing can bury. They tried lawsuits, threats, lies, but once the truth was spoken, it carried further than any slander ever could. And maybe the most important lesson, survival isn't enough. Living with integrity, choosing your own path even when it hurts, that's what real freedom feels like. So if you've ever felt pushed aside, silenced, or betrayed, I want you to remember my story. You are not powerless. You are not defined by what others say you are. You can choose courage. You can choose truth. If this resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe for more stories, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and let me know your thoughts in the comments.